So this morning I want to share three themes, and then I want to talk about habits, and then I want to share three themes. Now don't panic, it's not going to take twice as long. But first, if you wanted to take a look at today's scriptures, you could come up with three themes, and you could follow them this way. You could start out with wash your hands, care for the poor, love the Lord Jesus. And that would be a good homily. It would work fine. Because as we know, hand washing is important. It's a good thing to do. COVID taught us the singular importance of washing our hands and how we can prevent the spread of germs and infections. So that would be a good thing. And Jesus isn't really upset about hand washing. He's upset about something much deeper than hand washing. And then caring for the poor obviously is a nice thing to do, right? We care for the poor. It makes us feel good, helps us to be a better community. And so that would be a good thing. And of course, nobody would argue with loving the Lord, because we all gather here today because we do love the Lord and we want to love the Lord better. And so that in and of itself would be absolutely fine. It would be good and sufficient. And that's why I want to talk about habits. We are creatures of habit. In fact, you don't have to raise your hands, but I want you to think about how many of you are sitting exactly in the same place that you always sit. Of course you are. And I know exactly where you sit, and I know when you're missing because you're not sitting there. And of course, there's this wonderful group of young families that all sit next to each other so that they each have plausible deniability about their children. It's a good thing. Now, one of the things about habits is that habits are important, and every habit has a reason, and habits reinforce themselves. In fact, every habit has three parts. There's the cue, or the trigger. There's the part of the habit that helps us to remember to do it. So you wake up in the morning, your tongue goes across your teeth, you feel how scummy they are, and you go, I need to brush my teeth. And so then you do the habit itself. There's the actual action. And so you go and you brush your teeth, and then you have the reward. Then you take your tongue back across those teeth, and just like the commercial, you go, that feels good. And so every habit works on a similar basis. Now, the problem is your brain doesn't know the difference between good habits and bad habits, but your soul does. You see, habits get reinforced because there's a cue, there's an action, and there's a reward. And just of itself, bad habits work the same way. There's a cue, there's an action, and there's a reward. And so there has to be something that moderates the difference between developing good habits and developing bad habits. And of course, one of the reasons why it's so important is that habits build virtues. Good habits build good virtues. Good virtues build good character. And good character helps us when we aren't sure what to do. And that's why I want to share the themes differently. You see, really, the first theme needs to be love the Lord Jesus. And the reason why the first theme needs to be the love of the Lord Jesus is because all of the habits that we do need to begin from a deeper place. If everything we do is just on the surface and all we're doing is acting on the outside, then we look exactly like the Pharisees in the gospel today. We're doing all these great pious actions, but they have no substance. And those great pious actions are meaningless unless they come from a relationship with the Lord Jesus. And so that's why our first reading highlights the importance of not only following the commands, but building a deep relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. And it's that relationship that then helps us to understand what actions make sense. And that's why care for the poor isn't just something we do so that we feel good about ourselves. Care for the poor is a continuation of what Jesus did when he walked on the earth. We care for the poor because Jesus had a special concern for the poor. He had a special care for those who were on the margins. And so focusing on widows and orphans is not just something nice to do, it's actually carrying out the command of Matthew 25 that what we do for the least of these, we do for the Lord Jesus himself. And then flowing from that, you can do all the other habits. Like think about walking into church and dipping your hand into the holy water and making the sign of the cross. It's a wonderful habit, it's a wonderful tradition. But without baptism at the center of it, without that fundamental relationship that began when we were baptized into the Lord Jesus and made a conscious choice to follow the Lord Jesus, it's merely a nice sign, it's a nice habit. But if that habit proceeds from a relationship with the person of Jesus Christ, then it has the ability to shape our lives. And so we have both the external form and the internal relationship. But it begins first from the relationship. And without that relationship, the outward signs just become that, outward signs without meaning. And so I invite you this weekend to take a look at some of your habits, both good and bad. Look at the cues that are triggering you to perform those actions and the rewards that come from them, and ask yourself, what would it be like if I wanted to have the habit of more prayer or better prayer? What would it take to give me that cue in order to engage in that? And what would be the reward of that action? How do I start to shape the actions and behaviors of my life in such a way that they reinforce the most important relationship I have, the relationship with the Lord Jesus? So we begin first with love of the Lord, then care of the poor, and then washing hands makes perfectly good sense. Washing hands is a very healthy habit, and you can look up as you do it and see a sign that says, wash your hands and say your prayers, because Jesus and germs are everywhere.